everyone. This is Bree Luna from Reading Rev, and today we're going to talk about how to plan a standards-based lesson. We're going to go through all 6 of these steps today, and as I walk you through these steps, I'm going to show you a real novel study that I planned this way. So I'm going to walk you through exactly what I did to plan A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park novel study. And I did this for 5th graders. So before we get started into the novel study, the first step is that we want to start with our standards. We don't want to start with a novel. We don't want to start with chapter 1. We want to start with what do we want our kids to be able to do by the end of this book or by the end of this unit. So we're going to start with the standards. And we have to understand the standards and really all the complexities of the standards to make sure that we're getting all of them done and that all of our students are proficient in the standards by the end of the year. So I'm going to spend about 5 minutes today going through some of the basic standards 101, and then hopefully it'll give you a launching pad, and I will also link a couple other really good videos about more information for standards. So I'm going to use the Common Core State Standards. About 90% of the United States is using the Common Core State Standards. So I'm going to look at that. Within those Common Core State Standards, we have anchor standards. They're also called College and Career Readiness Anchor Standards. And what those are is basically what we want kids to be able to do by the end of their 12th grade year. By the time they're a senior, they should be able to accomplish these tasks and have these skills. So that's the end goal. And then the grade level standards actually connect to those that end goal of the anchor standards. And so it designates what each grade level needs to do in order to get to each anchor standard. So I'll show it to you like this. If this is our anchor standard, this is what we want kids to be able to do by the end of their senior year with key ideas and details. We can break that down and say, well, we know kindergartners can't read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and to make logical inferences from it, cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. We can't expect a kindergartner to do that. But what we can expect a kindergartner to do is, with prompting and support, ask and draw answers about key details in the text. So each year, we're asking the students to build on previous knowledge and get more complex until they eventually get to that anchor standard that we're hoping that all seniors can do. So I put just through grade 5 here, but you can understand kind of how it builds. And by 5th grade, so we're almost halfway there, about halfway there, then they should be able to quote accurately from a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inference from the text. So you can see how the end goal is complex, the kindergarten is very basic, and each grade level builds. The beautiful part about understanding it this way is we can also use this in remediation. So if we have a 5th grader who's not accurately doing that in 5th grade, who's struggling, we can go back and see, well, can they do the 4th grade standard? Can they do the 3rd grade standard? Maybe we need to back it all the way back up to 2nd grade and then fill in the gaps from there. So it kind of gives us a great way of almost a scope and sequence within each individual strand of what the skills are that build on each other. And we can use that for remediation. So we're going to talk today just about the ELA, or the English Language Arts strands, because that is what we're up to today. So the strands of the ELA standards are reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. And within those strands, we also have substrands. So the substrands of reading are literature, information text, and foundational skills. And I'm going to actually show you in just a moment, jump back over to the real Common Core State Standard website and actually show you how this looks. Another really cool thing is within the standards, it tells us how much we need to be focusing on those sub-skills. So in 4th grade, we should be using or teaching, instructing in literary or literature 50% of the time, and informational text 50% of the time. But by 12th grade, then it switches and we only use literature 30% of the time and informational text 70% of the time. So really diving in and reading those standards closely will give you a lot of insight into what your specific grade level expectations should be. The other thing to understand is all the abbreviations. So I know when I first started teaching, I would often build out an entire lesson plan and then go into the standards and hunt and be like, well, what standards did I meet with that? And we want to do backward planning instead. So we want to actually start with the standards we want to teach, and then we're going to plan out our unit from there. So here's how the abbreviations work. When you see CCRA, it stands for College and Career Readiness Anchor Standard. So this is a College and Career Readiness Anchor Standard for reading, and it's Anchor Standard number 1. When we see grade level standards, then it says Colorado State Standard for ELA for reading literature in 4th grade for Anchor Standard number 1. And with every grade, that Anchor Standard number 1 will relate back to the College and Career Readiness Anchor Standard. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to switch screens for a second and actually jump to the Home Common Core State Standard so you can see what it would actually look like. So from this is the corestandards.org, and we are going to go to read the standards. And today we're going to look at the English language arts, and we have 2 choices here. So we can jump in and look at just download the overall standards so that we see it broken down into the substandards and the grade levels like I just showed you. Let's look at that. So this is a downloadable PDF that you should have easy access to. This is great information. This is what I just showed you, that it breaks it down between literature and informational text. You should definitely read through that. It gives you a really great explanation of those anchor standards versus the grade level standards. But page 9 is where we really kind of want to start. So for this, it tells us these are the anchor standards. So the anchor standards for key ideas and details, anchor standards for craft and structure. These are what we want our 12th graders to have before they leave high school. And then it breaks down for us the reading standards for K through 5. So if you notice that I have this RL in the corner, that means this is the reading literature standard. So it's kind of that easy access abbreviation cue for us. And this is exactly what I had just copied and pasted in my other document, what kindergartners need to do, first graders need to do, second graders need to do. Scroll down, what third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders should be able to do based on that first standard. So based on that anchor standard. So this is an easy way to kind of see the whole scope and sequence. The other option that you can do is if you are just looking at your own grade level. So I planned a unit for 5th grade and I knew it was going to be a literature unit. So then I can come down here, click Reading Literature, grade 5, and this gives me the standards in this strand. So in my strand of literature, this is the anchor standards for my grade level. So again, those abbreviations are Common Core State Standards, English Language Arts, Literacy, Reading, Literature, grade 5, standard number 1. So my standard for this one is quote accurately from a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. And as you saw in my PowerPoint, I actually had copied and pasted that from that other PDF document, and it's exactly the same. So now jumping back to my my PowerPoint, when I'm going to plan a unit, I'm not going to just start chapter by chapter, finding vocabulary words and writing questions that pertain to that chapter for my students to answer. Instead, what I want to do is I want to decide ahead of time, what am I going to use this novel or this unit? How am I going to use this unit to teach standards that I still need my students to master? So it's backward planning. I didn't plan my unit and then go find these. Instead, I started with my standards in mind. So one useful thing that I've discovered is I actually took that last document and put it into a Google Docs and had it be an editable template. This way, every year I can decide exactly what standards I'm teaching. I can jot down notes. I can jot down notes about which ones I've taught, which ones I haven't, which students need more help. So in this document, it's super important that you don't just start typing in here, because then it's going to just be a shareable document that everyone's going to see your notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up and make a copy. And once you make a copy, then I'm going to say Luna lesson. And this is going to be 5th grade. So whatever your name, then you make a copy. Then this is now your personal document that you can type in. So the first ones are anchor standards. So I'm just going to scroll down through these and get to my grade level standards, because I know that if I get my grade level standards taught, then I'm reaching toward that anchor standard. So here's when I decide what standards am I going to focus on for this unit. And I usually don't focus on just one standard, because then you would have to teach one unit per standard and you would never get it all done. So I usually do several standards within one, especially at like a novel unit. We might be working on this for 3 or 4 weeks. So for this, I'm going to decide that I am doing, it's at the beginning of the year. I really want to focus on vocabulary acquisition and instruction at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to really pick an anchor standard that I'm going to focus on and explicitly teach. So using context is one way that students can figure out the meaning of an unknown word without the use of a teacher or a dictionary. So right here, I'm going to say a walk for water. And I'm going to teach this with the clunk strategies. And I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. And I'm going to highlight it a different color so that I can really tune in. So then I could also add some notes. If I have at the end of this unit 3 or 4 students that really didn't get it, I can even put another bullet point and say Tommy, Kate, and Allison need additional support. Wow. Okay. And then if I get it completely done, I feel like I have a class that has mastered it, except for maybe those 3 people, then I can even check it off as I go. So I then would scroll down. I know that I'm not spending an entire novel just on vocabulary. So I'm also going to go down and look, and I have several fluency passages in this novel. So they are written at different lexile levels. I can have some differentiation happening, but I'm going to put in walk for water, fluency passages, and I'm going to highlight that red. I'll come back to it after I teach the unit and see kind of who might need. I might also have grade level with purpose and understanding. It would fit there as well, because I have some comprehension questions that go with this. So walk for water. Wow. Okay. And I'm going to highlight that so that I'm keeping track and can see it really quickly. So now I have, for this unit, I have 2 vocabulary standards. I have a fluency standard, and it's not informational text. So I'm going to keep scrolling and I'm going to get down to literature. And in this text, in this novel, I am going to work on theme, and I'm going to work on comparing and contrasting characters. So ahead of time, before I even start my planning, I know exactly what standards I'm hoping to meet, and then I create all of my units and all of my plans based on that. So let me show you where we're going to go from here. So this is my planning page. I planned this page out before I created the unit. I know that I want to talk about the genre. It's a biography. It is a historical fiction, but mostly history. A few fictional things that we can talk about. I'm going to have repeated reading. I'm going to have questioning. So I missed that as a standard, but it is down here where we are going to, let's see. I thought questioning was in here, maybe not. Comparing and contrasting characters, so lots of character analysis. For the writing standard, I didn't go through all of that with my document, but for the writing standard, we're going to work on opinion writing for this unit, and we're going to, it's going to be in the form of group work or some expectations for them to come and have group discussions. So I also have comprehension and collaboration. This is a speaking and language standard, and I'm getting 2 speaking and language standards, a literature standard and a writing standard. So I plan this page out before I actually start looking at my unit. I always want to make sure that I am teaching real content. We want our kids to really know stuff. If you know stuff, you're a better reader. So as I'm thinking about starting this novel, I'm also going to be thinking about what background knowledge do I need to teach. I can't just start chapter 1 with no background knowledge without any context of what's happening in the story. So I'm going to build some context for them. I'm going to build some background knowledge. And these are actually purposely built throughout the story. So I'm going to talk about why this story is important to me and that my mom was part of building some water wells. And then I'm going to talk about the place, the time and the setting of this novel is when Sudan was in a civil war, and where is Sudan? What continent is that even on? What is the time period? I'm going to build some background knowledge for them before we start. And this becomes beautiful because it's also meeting those fluency standards and building real knowledge. The next step, this is where a lot of teachers dive into this first. The next step is then I'm going to plan engaging and purposeful activities and practice. So based on those standards that I'm trying to meet, I'm trying to get character perspectives and character analysis. I'm going to do a lot about that. I'm going to talk about what it means to be a productive group member, how you come to group to have a discussion, how you can be prepared, how you jot down your notes ahead of time. We're going to talk about that. This is an interactive vocabulary clunk strategy page that as you come to words that you don't know in text, how can you, using context or using clues that the author is giving you, make a very educated guess about those definitions. So all of these were created because I already knew what objectives and what standards I was going to get my kids to meet in this unit. And then we get to differentiation, and a lot of teachers struggle with this part because it's hard to have lots of different novels happening in the same classroom. It's hard to manage a lot of different differentiation components. And what I found is if you can think about differentiation within a scope and sequence, then it will really help you plan how could you differentiate or scaffold for students that might need more support, and how could you extend for students that need more challenge. So I always compare my standards and place my standards within this comprehension continuum. So I'm going to just look at the comprehension standards that I had chosen for this particular example. But the comprehension standards that I had chosen were character analysis, questioning, and theme, right? So here is my theme. So I could put a circle or a star here and say, okay, if I'm asking them to do theme, then all of these other comprehension skills are built background or previously needed skills to get to theme. So if I have a student who's struggling with theme, I might need to help them connect with different ideas. I might need to help them look at the author's perspective. I might need to help them capture the main idea or the details leading up to how those are all connected with theme. If I am asking students to ask questions and make connections, which is in this novel study, if they're struggling with that, then I might do a small group of saying, okay, let's just look at retelling and sequencing. Let's just look at what happened in the chapter. And when we can retell and sequence, then we might be able to ask, why do you think some of those individual moments happened, right? So we're constantly trying to get, this is a continuum of higher level comprehension. And once we get into the synthesizing and evaluating, if students are struggling with that, then I can help scaffold them by giving them some of the easier comprehension strategies and building it back up. And I could do that with small groups while perhaps the rest of the class is reading independently. Or perhaps when one group is, when I have groups meeting for group discussions, I could actually meet with one group and really lead their discussion group with some of these scaffolding ideas. And then finally, don't underestimate that even the students that may be struggling with decoding a complex text, oftentimes they are great at comprehending it, right? So oftentimes scaffolding the actual decoding of the text, maybe they listen to the text in Audible or an audio version of the text. Maybe one of my groups, we actually read the text aloud together so that some of those students that can't access the text, decoding it and reading it independently, they still get all of this rich character analysis and higher level comprehension. So I constantly want to assess my students' progress. I'm not waiting until the novel is done and the packet is turned in to think, oh my goodness, Jake just missed all of it. Like he bombed every single one of the opinion paragraphs. And I didn't catch it on the first or the second or the third. I caught it at the end of the novel when we have 4 paragraphs that are not ideal or need support. So instead, I'm constantly engaged in student learning. I'm constantly doing the feedback loop. I'm catching it low. I'm catching it on chapter 1 when I realize that someone doesn't really understand compare and contrast. I can work with them right there in the moment, give them some targeted feedback, have them correct it right then, and then celebrate the next success. So a lot of my assessment is not at the end of the unit assessment. It is not grading the packet at the end or grading the final comprehension test. A lot of my feedback is day-to-day mini slices of feedback and instruction. And I don't even have to collect all the packets in one day and take 26 packets home. Maybe I'm just collecting one group's packets. I'm checking in to make sure that they're getting this one standards task. And after I do that for each group, maybe by the end of the week, then I've checked in on everybody for that one standard. So I hope that is helpful. If you would like to access this lesson or have access to the Google Doc that is editable that you can keep track of. So I would also go back in, obviously, and get those other couple speaking and listening and writing standards written in there. And then I could do notes. When I'm ready to do my next novel study, then I'm going to circle back. I'm going to know who still didn't quite get theme. I'm going to maybe incorporate theme another time or two because it probably would take more than one hit. But the beautiful part of this, if you do standard-based novels, is they didn't just get one lesson on theme. They didn't get just one lesson on comparing and contrasting characters, they did that for an entire month. So hopefully by the end of the month, then I really just have a few names that I'm gonna circle back to, but the majority of my class has had enough explicit instruction and practice that hopefully they would be proficient. And then I would pick a completely different theme for my next, or different standard for my next novel. So my next novel, I might analyze how visual and multimedia elements contribute to meaning, and I might do some analysis of videos and PowerPoints and etc. Or I might compare and contrast two different stories, which is Walk for Water has a picture book. So that's another great place to do some character analysis and some story comparison. Okay, I hope that that was helpful, and I would love your feedback. Until next time, I will see you later.